trying to demonstrate here is one of Memco's unique products, which is the Substation Enhancement Panel. It's the first of its kind, and it's basically designed to address the deficiencies in the power sector as we have it today. What we have here is Substation Enhancement Panel itself, and inbuilt there we have a digital meter that measures all the parameters that comes into this panel. We have a capacitor power compensation controller here, and also down there we have capacitor bands that helps with power factor corrections. Here we have 5 meters, because at the moment it's been designed to take in 2 different sources of supply, what we call the grid and the off-grid. The grid would be the public supply, the off-grid could be an auxiliary supply, which could be your generator. Now, it's supposed to be at the high voltage side of the supply, so we could have different uprisers coming from the transformer or the generator as it is to supply different sections of the estate, however large it is. So because of that, there are meters here that can be mounted to measure the power or energy consumption from each of the uprisers. So for example, you have your grid supplying the 3 uprisers. We can measure power from each of the uprisers and add them to what the grid is measuring. The same thing happens to off-grid. We can measure cumulatively what each of the uprisers are measuring for the off-grid. Now we also have here what we call the dual tariff switcher, which helps to do the switching between the grid and the off-grid power. Alright, so this is a simple demonstration we have here that just shows you the indications once whichever supply you are on, whether it's the grid of the off-grid. Also, we have meters here that we're going to show you. We're going to demonstrate with 2 types of meters. We have one of the meter. These are 3-phase Gprs dual tariff meter. What that simply means is a dual tariff meter, but it comes inbuilt with the Gprs modem. Alright, so the consumers could recharge, could interact with the meter from the comfort of their mobile phones. The utility also can communicate with the meters and carry out some administrative functions. You could check if there are tampers in the meters and maybe disconnect the consumers completely, and they will not be able to reconnect the meters back even with their mobile phone. Alright, and down here we have the dual tariff switcher. Alright, so this is what the Substation Enhancement Panel communicates with in order to switch the tariffs of the meters for which of the supply that is being supplied at the moment. If you look into the LCD, you discover that the meter is on tariff 1. At the top left corner you can see T1, so the meter is on tariff 1, which could simulate the grid and has energy inside. While the second meter, if you look at the top left corner as well, you will see it's on tariff 1, but it has no credit. That's why you have that there is light coming on this one. As you can see, the bulb is on, and on the other meter the bulb is off. So at the moment where we switch the supply to off-grid, which will be the tariff 2, we'll observe that we'll have no credit here, because what we have done is to put credits on tariff 1 and not credit on tariff 2 for this meter, while in this meter we have credit on tariff 2 and we don't have credit on tariff 1. So the moment you switch supply, we expect that the bulb here is going to go off because there will be credit on tariff 2, while the bulb here will come on because there is now credit on tariff 2, unlike this present stage where we do not have credit on tariff 1. Now, a good thing about this scenario simply is used for a clustered meter setup. So where you have an estate where all the meters are in one position, and you do not want to have different dual tariff modems on each of the meters, you will have one, and that is cascaded along all the dual tariffs, so they all switch at the same time, which also gives you the flexibility of a smart feature in the meter. So what that means now is that you can remotely communicate with the meter, get load profiles, see your measurements and all that. You can also aggregate the sum of energy consumption as against what the meters are aggregating together at the Substation Enhancement Panel. While at this side we have 2 meters, alright? These are single-phase dual tariff meters. What we had before was 3-phase Gprs dual tariff meters, but this is just a single-phase dual tariff meter. Now in this case, where you just want to switch the consumers without any form of smart functionality, this can be put in place. So you have a downlink communication of PLC to a UIU to the consumer premises, where the consumer can control the meter with their PLC UIU, and of course give them the flexibility of dual tariff functionality. All right. So this setup is good in situations where we have meters scattered in each of the consumer premises. and they are not in a clustered environment. So in other words, you are sending a command directly to the meter to switch. The good thing about the dual tariff switches topology is that irrespective of where the enhancement panel is placed, we have a range of, I think, 1.5 kilometers to about 3.5 kilometers radius, that we can communicate and switch the meter, which is quite big. All right. So, and of course, they operate also in mesh topology. So even if it exceeds that, each of the switches can also act as a transmitter, for all of the other meters that are outside the radius of about 3.5 kilometers. All right. So in this topology as well, what we can do also is to provide a gateway. So that gateway can also be used to further make this meter smart. So what that would do is the consumers can also communicate with this meter from their mobile phone through the gateway to also query the meter and also recharge their meters. So these are the two different topologies. One topology supports clustered scenario with just Gprs modems, and you have SIM card interrupt meters like I explained earlier. While this topology is not clustered, the meters can be installed at consumer premises and will still be able to switch the meters at a maximum of about 3.5 kilometers. All right, so now we're going to demonstrate the switching for you, and you can see each of the meters switch. We also implemented the same thing here, where we have credit on tariff 1 and no credit on tariff 2 for one meter. The meters are off now. And where we have credit on tariff 2 and no credit on tariff 1 for the other meter. So just come with me now while we switch. All right, so what we have here now is the way we are simulating. You can see there are two supplies into the enhancement panel. We have the grid and we have the off grid, all right, that goes into the enhancement panel. So what we'll do is to switch. Now both of them are off, so we're going to turn on the grid, and we'll observe that if the meters are on grid tariff 1, they are not going to switch because they are presently on tariff 1. So let's turn it on. As you can see, they are all on. The grid is on, okay? And if you go right there, the meters are on. So if we look at all the meters, we're going to see that tariff very quickly to know what state they are in. This meter is on tariff 1. If you look at the top left corner, we saw earlier, and has a credit of about 34.98. This meter here is on tariff 1, but doesn't have any credits. So you see that the two bulbs, this bulb is off, while this bulb is on. While in this second state here, we can see that this first meter here is on tariff 1, but it's already in negative because the threshold has been exceeded. That's why we do not have credits, we do not have light. But this other meter right here is on tariff 1, and you can see it has a credit of about 24.91, and there is supply to the consumer premises as it is. So what we'll do now is to go and switch the source of supply, and we'll observe the change. So now we're switching the supply. We're turning off the grid, all right, and turning off the off grid. So that's we observe that it has been turned now to off grid, and we need to watch the meter switch. All right, you can see this meter is switched to tariff 2, while the other meter, because of its topology, takes about 20-30 seconds to switch. All right, and that would also switch to the other tariff. Now it can be configured in such a way where you do not want the meters to switch until you have confirmed perfect that switched. So if we go look closely at the meters, we will observe that they have all been switched to tariff 2. So this first meter we have here is now on tariff 2, but there is no credit on them. That's why there is no supply. While this meter here is on tariff 2 but has a credit of 19.84, that's why we have supply. All right, and if we come here, we can also see that this meter now has credit on tariff 2. Before it was on negative, threshold was exceeded. So now it has credit on tariff 2, and you can see it has supply. All right, while this other meter here doesn't have credit on tariff 2. The credit is about 0.00. So that is why it doesn't have supply. Like I was saying, you can configure it in such a way that you do not want the supply to go in until you have confirmed the tariff. status of the supply. So for example, you're running on generator and you're switching over, the meter will not supply until it has confirmed the present state of the supply, whether it's a gen tariff or a grid tariff or an off-grid tariff, as the case may be. So this simply demonstrates the entire dual tariff configuration and the dual tariff setup. Thank you very much.